Next Saturday night is Purim. The Mishnah teaches us when the month of Purim, Adar, comes in, Marbim b'simcha, we increase our joy. Do you find it difficult to add to our simcha with all that is going on in Israel and the world? But did you ever stop to wonder that over our long diaspora history, that many of our ancestors had it worse than we are right now? No state of Israel and a diaspora and a persecution more than what we're feeling now. And yet, we know from their writings and their descriptions that they observed and celebrated the Simcha of Purim, often with abandon. How is that so? Where did they find that well of joy that they could use and celebrate on Purim? I recently read an article about this term called manifesting. Kind of complicated, but the idea is that perhaps with just our mind, I'll say and add with our imagination, we can will things into existence, at least temporarily. And so on Purim Day, our ancestors willed and imagined that the story of Purim came true that very day, often through the Purim spiel. So not just listening and hearing the Megillah, but actually reenacting it. Because for many of our ancestors, the story of Purim, with just a little bit of tweaks, was their story up until the end, where the Jews were able to vanquish their foes, or at least to have some power. Because how does the Purim story begin? You have this great, powerful ruler, and yes, there's the vacancy of the kingship, of the queenship, and Esther is brought into the harem. She has no choice. She has to go there, because it's not one of the 3 laws that you don't break in order to save your life. And Mordechai is smart and says, don't tell anybody that you're Jewish. Living a life, a little bit of secrecy, just to save your life, doing whatever you can, even if it's against Jewish tradition, to save our life. But then Haman wants Mordechai to bow down to him. That's one of the 3 mitzvot that you don't break to save your life: idolatry, incest, or killing another person. And so he refuses. And of course, that causes Haman to want to commit genocide against the entire Jewish people. But we have a secret weapon, at least for Purim. We have Queen Esther, who has come to this moment, as Mordechai says, to save the Jewish people. She's reluctant, but she goes and does it. And of course, she's able to accuse, rightfully so, Haman. And he's hung on the gallows. But remember the story. Once the king's signet ring has been done on something, then it has to be done. So what are the Jews going to do? It says on the 13th of Adar, they are going to come and attack the Jews. They have permission to do so. The king then says to Mordechai and Esther, here is my ring. You Jews can defend yourself. You can defend yourself. You are no longer powerless. So chapter 9 describes that most people followed it and said, okay, I'm not going to go and attack the Jews because they have the ability to defend themselves. There are a few crazies, numbering in the hundreds and the thousands. They come and attack the Jews, and the Jews are able to repel them. Long live the Jews after that. So imagine that story coming to life. V'nahafochu. Basically, everything is topsy-turvy, has turned itself on. The Jews are no longer these powerless peasants. They have an ability to defend themselves. That is where the joy of Purim comes from. To the fact that even in the Holocaust, people made sure to celebrate Purim. A story is told that in Dachau on Purim in 1945, there was a man named Chaim the Rabbi. He had the calendar in his head, and he made sure in the cold snow, as the Germans were losing, people were going on death marches, not a good place to be in. And he still made sure that the Purim spiel took place that day. And lo and behold, 3 months later, Dachau was liberated. And 3 years later, Israel became a state. And we have been able to defend ourselves ever since. So ask ourselves, yes, October 7th happened. We are in great distress. But can we find some of that joy, some of the joy of Purim, and some of the joy of knowing that we have the Israeli Defense Force there for us? It's not going to be easy, because every single day brings us a reminder of how things are, how hard things are, even when our own Jewish brethren are doing it. Like the other day when Jonathan Glazer at the Oscars, after making a film about the Shoah, basically said, why is the Shoah, why is my Jewishness being used for what's going on in Gaza and in Israel? But notice his words, and that's where we have to be troublesome with. He said, I feel for the victims of Israel, but I'm against the attack on Gaza. Notice those words. For me, I'm not going to say I'm celebrating the death of people in Gaza. But in order to be able to speak to somebody, to engage with them, they need to be able to say the attack on Israel, Israel's counter-offensive to make sure it never happens again, and Israel has a right to succeed, a right to defend themselves. We are in chapter 9 of the Megillah. We have the ability to defend ourselves, and now it's up to the others to decide, are they going to come out against the Jews and the Israelis and have to make us defend ourselves? Or are they going to say, we're your equal, and now let us live in as much peace and tolerance as we possibly can? The choice is really the world. Yes, we have to help try to convince them, but it's the world's. And so, yes, I'm going to be conflicted as I get on a plane next Purim night, next week, to go to Israel. But I'm going to try to do so with as much simcha as possible, with as much joy as possible, knowing that I'm going to be able to see IDF soldiers, to see Israelis face to face, and we can say, v'nahafochu. We were once in the gas chambers, and now we're here in Israel. We were once attacked on October 7th, 2023, and may that never happen again. And yes, I do dream one day that all human beings can dance together one-on-one, so we no longer have to even celebrate things like Purim, which is about fighting with one another. Shabbat Shalom.